I have 2 disks in the system. I have an ext4 formatted disk, Linux Base 2, as a USB stick. I also have a FAT32 formatted USB stick loaded here. If I perform a sudo fdisk-l, it lists the units that are associated with it. Dev SDE1 is this last one I put in the FAT32 drive. I'm going to erase everything on the FAT32 drive without reformatting it because it's currently formatted FAT32 in a way that's compatible with an old computer I had, so I don't want to erase that. But I will erase all the contents. Okay, now having deleted the contents, I wish to rename this disk. The simplest way I know to do that is to bring up disks, find the correct disk. Yes, that's the right one. Turn it off. Then edit the file system to change the name. Turn it back on, and as you can see, it is now empty. I need this empty disk to do the next step. If I go to multibootusb, the last disk loaded is the one that's going to show up first. SDE1 is the correct drive. First browser or distro, and since the distros I want to copy are under the Linux Base 2 drive, I'll start with the one I want to be on the list first. Then click install distro, and this will start to install this distribution in multi-boot form on the USB stick that I just loaded. Multi-boot USB will allow me to have multiple distributions on the same USB stick, all of which are live bootable. program is convenient, it works, and has the advantage that it allows me to build my Linux images and make the disks that run them entirely within Linux. I don't have to use Windows for anything outside. The one exception I've had to that rule is that I have an old e-machines which won't boot from a FAT32 drive unless it was formatted with Windows XP. I don't entirely know why. If I format it as FAT32 with anything else, it may boot on other machines, but it won't boot on that e-machines. So that's why I try to retain the format for the FAT32 between copies. It saves me trouble on the system that I'm using it on. Other people wouldn't necessarily have the same problem. Multiboot USB sets up an EFI type boot, so it'll work on any UEFI system that does not have secure boot enabled. Debian still does not have a secure boot compatible installation. You have to turn off secure boot, but if you have secure boot off and UEFI on, it should boot. I verified that with at least one Dell machine. I have an Acer machine that will boot in legacy BIOS mode only, but that will also work. An 8 gigabyte USB stick will hold enough, has enough space for about 3 of these live boot images.
We're going to get a full time out in Silver Creek. Silver Creek section is directly across us. They brought a big crowd up here, and they are up and enthusiastic here. They're dragging a 34-30 lead on the third-ranked team in 4A. Bulldog Athletics being brought to you this winter by Mentor Transmission, iHeart Family Vision, Business Health Plus, Laborers International Union Local 795, Denton Your Family Dentistry, Marksville Striking Fair, also by Cherry Valley Golf Course, Moby Dick Seafood Restaurant, All-in-One Pediatrics, Sam Tech, Quick Cash ATM, and the City of New Albany.
Okay, it's now finished installing the first live boot distribution. You see Debian Live GLFPE 512 i386 is down in this area. If you look at the original disk, you'll see this EFI multi-boot USB directories are now there. The hybrid ISO installation is inside this folder, along with various boot things. This syslinux.cfg is something that will change later. One of these days I'll get around to writing a script to do this, but I'll show you how to change this manually later. Okay, now that I've got one installation on, I'll do a second installation. I'm going to go to, let's see, I want PCB to be second on the list. Okay, the first installation is a version of Linux of Debian Linux, I've customized to make a programming environment that suits me. The second one is one that's been customized to put PC board editing tools, KiCad, GURBView, things like that. Because they're fairly large, I decided to separate them into their own distribution. A lot of the same programs are on this as on the GLFPE, the programming environment disk, but I've removed some of them to save space. So it's a different flavor, but it's still a custom live boot Debian. All these are 386 versions, meaning technically 6x86 or x686. Because that's the minimum machine that Debian will support now. This is for Debian 9 stretch. Assuming it works, I have yet to see. I'm recording this session with Record My Desktop, which is another program I've installed into the custom system. I've used Record My Desktop before, but I haven't tried to do it to record a computer session with sound before. So this is an experiment. The current versions of these Debian Live distributions that I've customized, version 5.12, it's an arbitrary number, but it follows a long series. The versions were created as of January 1st, 2018. I set up all the configuration files at about the same time and ran them overnight so that I had all of them upgraded on the same date. I'm trying to make a couple of runtime disks that will run all the versions that I have. I've got 4 versions. Well, the same version of 4 types of distribution. The programming environment, GLFPE, GLF, Gary Elfwisgard, GLF's programming environment, GLFPE, GFPCB, which is Gary Elfwisgard's PCB distribution. I'm going to put one more on here. The third distribution, experimental for right now, I haven't done much with it just yet, is Gwine for Gary's Wine implementation. Wine can also be rather large. Wine provides a Windows environment, or Windows compatible environment. It will run Windows executables. In this case, 32-bit. 64-bit is possible. I haven't tried it yet because it's considerably larger and a little more complicated because it has to be able to run both 64 and 32-bit. I just haven't gone through the research yet to find out what I need to do for that. 32-bit is fairly straightforward because the whole operating system is 32-bit. Alas, 32-bit seems to be leaking away from us. Too many distributions, too many applications are no longer supporting it. NVIDIA's announced they won't support 32-bit drivers anymore. Just one of many who've said the same thing. I'm something of a fan of 32-bit operating system as a universal. It works on older Intels, it works on any AMD. It's a universal thing that just works, but I can't fight everybody else in the world. This USB stick will have all 3 of the 32-bit distros that I've put together. GLFPE, GFTCB, and Gwine. I have one more for AMD 64 that's another copy of the GLFPE, just in case I need it for something. One thing I would need it for is if I want to run Chrome, the actual Google Chrome browser. It only exists as a 64-bit program. I have found that for most things I want to do, Chromium is okay, and it's available for 32-bit. One thing that Chromium will not do that Chrome will do is Chromium cannot currently access Netflix. Chrome can, natively, but it's proprietary and I don't put it on my distribution disks. You have to download the latest copy, and I decided since it's problematic for me to distribute it, I don't. I distribute Chromium because it's part of the distribution. The base Debian distribution has it. Now that Firefox will support Netflix, and I have Firefox 32-bit version on here, I don't really need Chrome just to watch Netflix. Okay, now that means that all 3 have been loaded on here. All 3 of these distributions are now on. So I'll shut that down. As you see, 3 distribution folders are now there for the 3 that are there. I'm going to bring up this again, syslinux.cfg file, because that determines what I see when I get my initial boot. Now the initial boot here includes a boot from hard drive, a boot from Grug, and a clock boot manager, none of which are particularly important to me. And I choose to remove these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this menu default line down to a strategic point right here, such that the live GLFPE becomes the default boot. I'm going to go up here and simply remove these menu items. Now, the only 3 items in the menu are the 3 that I care about. I will save that. As I said, at some point I'll come up with a script to do the same job, but for right now I do it manually. Now, at this point, this disk, I've renamed the disk to match the version number, the 512, and it is now bootable. And if I reboot the system with that disk in it, I will get a choice of those 3 operating systems. However, since I can't record that process directly, this will have to be the end of this tutorial recording. Goodbye.